In the glittering ballroom of Haverford Manor, a grand masquerade hides dark secrets. When a powerful financier collapses, poisoned by cyanide, a tiny vial in his hand sparks suspicion. Was it the desperate host, clinging to a failing empire, the enigmatic dancer with a hidden past, or the shadowy stranger in black, slipping through the crowd? As masks fall and motives unravel, only Hercule Poirot's brilliant mind can pierce the veil of deceit to unmask a killer in a deadly game of power and betrayal. Chapter 1. The Grand Masquerade. The great hall of Haverford Manor shimmered with 1,000 candlelights, their flames caught in the facets of crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls from the vaulted ceiling. The air was a symphony of murmured voices, the clink of champagne flutes, and the soft strains of a string quartet weaving through the crowd. It was the night of Lord Reginald Haverford's annual Masquerade Ball, a spectacle that drew the cream of England's society to this ancient estate in the heart of Kent. The guests, draped in silks and velvets, moved with the languid grace of those accustomed to wealth, their faces hidden behind masks of every conceivable design. Gilded peacocks, jeweled harlequins, and somber phantoms. Hercule Poirot stood near a marble pillar, his small, precise figure almost lost amid the swirling grandeur. His ebony mask, a sleek and unadorned crescent, revealed only his keen green eyes and the immaculate curve of his mustache, which he touched lightly with a gloved finger. He had come at the insistence of Lady Margaret Haverford's cousin, a tiresome woman who believed Poirot's presence would lend her own arrival a certain distinction. Poirot, ever courteous, had accepted, though his true interest lay in observing the human pageant before him. "The mask, mon ami," he murmured to Captain Arthur Hastings, who stood at his elbow, resplendent in a crimson domino. "It conceals the face, but it reveals the soul. Regardez how they move, how they posture." Hastings, whose honest face struggled to conceal his discomfort in the stuffy mask, chuckled. "You see more in a twirl of a skirt than I do in a ledger, Poirot. It's just a party, isn't it?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A party, Hastings, is never just a party. It is a stage, and tonight I sense the curtain rises on a drama." The hall was a kaleidoscope of color and motion. Lord Haverford, the host, cut an imposing figure in a burgundy doublet and a mask adorned with raven feathers, his voice booming as he greeted guests. His wife, Lady Margaret, glided beside him, her delicate frame swathed in sapphire silk, her mask a filigree of silver lace that did little to hide her anxious glances. Poirot noted her unease, filing it away in the orderly chambers of his mind. Across the room a dancer, Miss Clara Vane, spun through a waltz, her movements as fluid as water, her silver mask catching the light like a mirror. And then there was the stranger, a tall, lean figure in a black cloak and a featureless mask, who seemed to melt into the shadows whenever Poirot's gaze lingered too long. At the stroke of midnight, the music faltered and a woman's scream shattered the revelry. The dancers froze, their masks turning toward the center of the hall. There, sprawled on the polished oak floor, lay a man, his gold-trimmed mask askew, his body unnaturally still. His face, now visible, was twisted in a grimace, his lips tinged an unnatural blue. A murmur rippled through the crowd, growing into a tide of gasps and whispers. Poirot, with the calm of a man accustomed to death's intrusion, pushed forward, Hastings trailing behind. "Stand back, s'il vous plaît," Poirot commanded, his voice soft but authoritative. He knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering over the man's velvet jacket. The scent of almonds, faint but unmistakable, hung in the air. "Cyanide," Poirot said quietly, his eyes narrowing. He examined the man's clenched fist, which to his surprise opened to reveal a small glass vial, its stopper missing. Poirot's brow furrowed. "Curieux," he muttered. "This vial, it was not here when he fell." "I am certain," Hastings, peering over his shoulder, frowned. "How can you be sure, Poirot?" It all happened so quickly, Poirot's mustache twitched. "The little gray cells, Hastings. They do not lie. This vial was placed, and placed with purpose." He rose, his gaze sweeping the crowd. Lord Haverford, his face pale beneath his mask, was barking orders to a footman to fetch the police. Lady Margaret clutched her husband's arm, her eyes wide with horror. Miss Vane stood apart, her posture rigid, her hands clasped tightly. The stranger in black was nowhere to be seen. A portly man in a jester's mask identified the victim. "It's Sir Malcolm Drake," he exclaimed, his voice trembling. "The banker, my God, what happened?" Whispers spread like wildfire. Sir Malcolm, a titan of finance known for his ruthless deals and vast influence. Had it been a heart attack? A feud? A secret uncovered? Poirot, ignoring the speculation, turned to Hastings. "Observe, mon ami, the masks may hide the faces, but the eyes, they betray everything. Tonight we have stumbled into a game most dangerous." As the guests retreated, their gaiety replaced by unease, Poirot's mind was already at work, sorting, analyzing, arranging the pieces of this sudden tragedy. The ebony mask on his own face felt heavier now, a reminder that truth, like the faces in this room, was often concealed, but never beyond the reach of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 2. The Host's Burden. The study of Lord Reginald Haverford was a sanctuary of oak and leather, its walls lined with shelves that groaned under the weight of ancient tomes and maritime charts. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows across the room where the air was heavy with the scent of old cigars and wax polish. Hercule Poirot stood near the window, his small, neat figure framed by the heavy damask curtains, his ebony mask now removed to reveal the sharp lines of his face and the meticulous curve of his mustache. The chaos of the ballroom had been left behind, but its echoes lingered in the tension that clung to the manor like damp fog. Captain Hastings, seated in a high-backed chair, fidgeted with his crimson domino, his honest face creased with unease. Lord Haverford stood behind his desk, a man of 50 whose soldierly bearing was at odds with the faint tremor in his hands. His burgundy doublet was unbuttoned at the collar, and his raven-feathered mask lay discarded on a pile of papers, revealing a face lined with fatigue. His eyes, a deep gray, flickered between Poirot and the decanter of brandy on the sideboard. "This is a nightmare, Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice hoarse. "Sir Malcolm was my friend, a good man, a brilliant man. To die like this in my home." He trailed off, pouring a generous measure of brandy into a crystal glass. Poirot's green eyes, bright and unyielding, studied the host. "A tragedy indeed, Lord Haverford. But permit me to observe that tragedies they are rarely without cause. Sir Malcolm Drake was poisoned. Cyanide, a most deliberate choice. You will agree, I think, that such a death suggests a purpose." His voice was soft, precise, each word placed like a chess piece on a board. Haverford's hand paused mid-air, the brandy glass catching the firelight. "Poisoned? You're certain?" He set the glass down with a clink, his jaw tightening. "The police will handle this, surely. I've sent for them. Inspector Japp, I believe, from Scotland Yard. Poirot inclined his head. Oui, Inspector Japp is competent, but he lacks, perhaps, the finesse of Hercule Poirot. Tell me, monsieur, what was the nature of your friendship with Sir Malcolm? You spoke of him with warmth, yet your eyes, they betray a certain disquiet. Haverford bristled, his broad shoulders squaring. Disquiet? I've just lost a friend, man. And in front of half of England's elite. My reputation, my family's name, it's all at stake. He sank into the chair behind his desk, rubbing his temples. Malcolm and I were negotiating a merger, his banking empire with my shipping interests. It was to be a triumph, a union that would secure both our futures. Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign that his mind was turning over this new piece of information. A merger, you say? Most interesting. Such ventures, they often stir the waters, none. Rivals, perhaps, who wished this merger to fail, or partners who felt, shall we say, excluded. Haverford's gaze darted to the window, where the night pressed black against the glass. There's always competition in business, Mr. Poirot. Julian Carver, for one. His shipping line has been snapping at my heels for years. He'd have given anything to see this deal collapse, but he wasn't here tonight. I made sure of that. His tone held a bitter edge, and Poirot noted the name, Julian Carver, filing it away with the precision of a librarian. And your wife, Lady Haverford, Poirot continued, his voice smooth as silk. She seemed most distressed when Sir Malcolm's name was mentioned in the ballroom. A delicate nature, perhaps, or something more personal. Haverford's face darkened, his fingers tightening around the arms of his chair. Margaret is delicate, yes. The shock of a death in our home. It's too much for her. She's not accustomed to such horrors. He rose abruptly, crossing to the sideboard to pour another brandy, though the first remained untouched. She barely knew Malcolm, beyond polite conversation. You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. Poirot's eyes gleamed undeterred. The wrong tree, monsieur? Perhaps, but Hercule Poirot, he does not bark. He observes, he listens, and he thinks. And in this moment I observe that you avoid my question. Lady Haverford's distress, it was not merely the shock of death. It was the shock of this death. Why? Haverford's hand froze on the decanter, and for a moment the only sound was the crackle of the fire. He turned, his face a mask of controlled anger. You're impertinent, sir. My wife is above suspicion. She's a lady, not some scheming villain from one of your cases. Poirot raised a placating hand. Impertinence is not my intention, Lord Haverford. But truth, it is like a splinter. It must be drawn out no matter the discomfort. You say Sir Malcolm was your friend, yet your business teeters on the edge, does it not? A merger with a man of his wealth would be a lifeline. And yet lifelines, they can sometimes become nooses. Haverford's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. You've a flair for the dramatic, Poirot. My business is sound enough. The merger was an opportunity, not a necessity. He drained his brandy in one swift gulp, though Poirot noted the slight shake of the glass against his lips. Hastings, who had been silent, shifted uncomfortably. Look here, Poirot, he whispered, leading close. You're pushing him awfully hard. The man's just lost a friend, and now you're suggesting his wife's involved? Poirot's gaze remained fixed on Haverford. Mon ami, I suggest nothing, I inquire. The truth it hides in the spaces between words, in the flicker of an eye, in the tremble of a hand. Lord Haverford, he tells us much, and yet he tells us nothing. The door creaked open, admitting a footman, a nervous youth with pale cheeks and downcast eyes. "My lord," he said, bowing, "the police have arrived. Inspector Japp requests your presence in the ballroom." Haverford nodded curtly. "Very well, Thomas. Tell him I'll be there presently." As the footman retreated, Poirot's eyes followed him, noting the boy's hurried steps and the way his hands twisted together. "That one," Poirot murmured to Hastings. "He is afraid." But of what? The body or something more? They followed Haverford back to the ballroom, where the atmosphere had shifted from festive to funereal. Guests lingered in clusters, their masks now clutched in hands or tucked into pockets, their faces pale and drawn. Inspector Japp, a sturdy man with a bristling mustache, stood near the spot where Sir Malcolm had fallen, barking orders to a pair of constables. The body had been covered with a sheet, but the outline of Sir Malcolm's form was unmistakable. "Poirot!" Japp exclaimed, his tone a mix of exasperation and relief. "I might have known you'd be here, poking your nose into things. What's this about a vial?" He held up a small evidence bag within which gleamed the glass vial Poirot had found in Sir Malcolm's hand. Poirot inclined his head. "A most curious detail, Inspector. The vial, it contained cyanide, or so I suspect pending your coroner's report. But it was not in Sir Malcolm's hand when he fell. It was placed there after death by a hand most cunning." Japp frowned, scratching his chin. "Placed? You're saying the killer wanted us to find it?" "Précisément," Poirot replied. "It is a distraction, a misdirection. The true method of the poison, it lies elsewhere. I suggest you examine the champagne glasses on that tray." He gestured to a silver tray near the edge of the dance floor, where a dozen flutes stood, some half empty, their bubbles long since faded. Japp grunted but signaled a constable to collect the tray. "You're always one step ahead, Poirot. Makes my job harder, you know." He turned to Haverford. "Lord Haverford, I'll need a list of every guest, every servant, anyone who was in this room tonight. And no one leaves the manor until I say so." Haverford nodded, though his face was a mask of barely contained frustration. "Of course, Inspector. I'll have my staff prepare the list." He glanced at Poirot, his eyes narrowing. "And you, Mr. Poirot, will you be staying to assist?" Poirot smiled, a small enigmatic curve of his lips. "Hercule Poirot does not merely assist, monsieur. He uncovers. And tonight I intend to uncover the truth behind this most tragic masquerade." As Haverford strode away to confer with his butler, Poirot turned his attention to the ballroom once more. The guests had dispersed to the edges of the room, their whispers a low hum of speculation. Lady Margaret stood near a window, her sapphire gown catching the moonlight, her hands clasped tightly before her. Miss Clara Vane, the dancer, leaned against a pillar, her silver mask dangling from her fingers, her expression unreadable. And the stranger in black, Victor Lange, or so he called himself, was nowhere to be seen, though Poirot's instincts told him the man had not gone far. "Hastings," Poirot said softly. "There is much here that does not meet the eye. Lord Haverford speaks of friendship, yet his hands betray his fear. Lady Haverford's tears, they are not for a stranger. Miss Vane, she moves with the grace of a dancer, but her eyes, they are those of a hunter. And this Lange, he is a shadow, slipping through the cracks of this house. We must watch them all. Hastings nodded, though his brow furrowed. It's a devil of a mess, Poirot. Poison, spies, mergers, what's it all mean? It means, mon ami, Poirot said, his voice low and deliberate, that someone in this house has played a dangerous game and Sir Malcolm Drake has paid the price. But Hercule Poirot, he does not play games, he wins them. The firelight flickered and the shadows danced as Poirot's little gray cells began their relentless work, piecing together the puzzle of the Ebony Mask. Chapter 3. The Dancer's Secret. The small parlor off the main corridor of Haverford Manor was a haven of quiet amidst the storm that had engulfed the house. Its walls, papered in soft green, were adorned with delicate watercolor landscapes, and a single chandelier cast a muted glow over a rosewood table and a scattering of plush chairs. A grand piano stood in one corner, its polished surface reflecting the flicker of a dying fire. Hercule Poirot entered with his characteristic precision, his polished shoes silent on the thick Aubusson carpet. Captain Hastings followed, his crimson domino now draped over his arm, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease. Miss Clara Vane was already there, poised near the piano as though it were a stage. She wore a gown of shimmering silver, its folds catching the light like liquid moonlight, and her movements were those of a dancer, deliberate, graceful, yet somehow guarded. Her silver mask, discarded on the table, revealed a face of striking beauty. High cheekbones, a sharp jaw, and eyes the color of storm clouds. She was practicing a slow pirouette, her arms extended, when Poirot's voice broke the silence. "Mademoiselle Vane," he said, his tone courteous but firm. "You will permit me a moment of your time, I trust. The events of this evening, they demand our attention." Clara stopped mid-turn, her arms lowering with the precision of a metronome. She faced Poirot, her expression cool, almost defiant. "Mr. Poirot," she replied, her voice low and melodic, "I'm not sure what I can offer. I'm a dancer, not a detective. Sir Malcolm's death is dreadful, but I scarcely knew him." Poirot's green eyes gleamed as he took a seat, gesturing for Hastings to do the same. "Scarcely knew him, you say? And yet, mademoiselle, you were observed in conversation with Sir Malcolm not an hour before his collapse. A conversation, I am told, that was not entirely amicable." Clara's lips tightened, a fleeting shadow crossing her face. She moved to the piano, trailing a finger along its edge as though to steady herself. "You've been listening to gossip, Mr. Poirot. Sir Malcolm admired my dancing. He approached me to offer patronage for my next performance. A tour in Paris, perhaps. I listened, as one does to a wealthy man with grand ideas. But I declined. That was all." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache quivering slightly. "All? Non, non, mademoiselle. The eyes of Hercule Poirot, they see more than polite refusals. Your manner, it is too composed, too precise. And your hands—" He gestured toward her fingers, which rested lightly on the piano. "They are not the hands of a dancer alone. The calluses, they speak of something less delicate." Clara's hand flinched almost imperceptibly, and she folded her arms, concealing her palms. "You're very observant, Mr. Poirot," she said, her tone edged with frost. "Dancing is not all grace and satin slippers. It's discipline, strength. My hands bear the marks of my work." Nothing more. Hastings, seated awkwardly on the edge of his chair, leaned forward. "Look here, Miss Vane. No one's accusing you of anything. Poirot's just trying to get to the bottom of this. Sir Malcolm was poisoned. Cyanide, they say. If you saw anyone near him, it could help. Clara's gaze flicked to Hastings, softening slightly. Captain Hastings, I saw nothing unusual. The ballroom was crowded, masks everywhere. I was dancing, speaking with guests. Sir Malcolm was alive, laughing, drinking his champagne. Then he wasn't, her voice caught. A crack in her polished facade, but she recovered quickly. I wish I could help, truly. Poirot rose, pacing slowly before the fire, his hands clasped behind his back. Let us consider, mademoiselle, the nature of this evening. A masquerade, a place of concealment, of secrets. Sir Malcolm, a man of power, a man of wealth, dies in a manner most theatrical. And you, a dancer of such skill, you move through this world with the ease of one accustomed to shadows. Tell me, what did Sir Malcolm offer that you refused so firmly? Clara's eyes narrowed, but she answered with measured calm. He offered money, mister. Poirot, a great deal of it. Enough to fund a season abroad, to make my name known beyond London. But I don't trust men like him. Men who see art as a transaction, who think everything and everyone can be bought. Poirot stopped pacing, his gaze locking onto hers. And this refusal, it angered him? She hesitated, her fingers brushing the piano keys, producing a faint, discordant note. He was insistent. He didn't like being told no, but it wasn't a quarrel, not really. He laughed it off, said I'd change my mind. I didn't. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Most interesting, mademoiselle. And where were you when the scream was heard? When Sir Malcolm fell? I was near the refreshment table, she said quickly. I'd just finished a dance. People were everywhere. Guests, servants. I saw him clutch his chest, then collapse. It was over so fast. Her voice was steady, but Poirot noted the slight tightening of her jaw, the way her eyes avoided his. Hastings, ever the gentleman, spoke up. It must have been awful, Miss Vane, seeing something like that. No wonder you're shaken. Clara offered a faint smile. Thank you, Captain. But I'm used to keeping my composure. A dancer must, you know. She straightened, her posture regal once more. If that's all, Mr. Poirot, I'd like to retire. This evening has been exhausting. Poirot inclined his head. For the moment, mademoiselle. But Hercule Poirot, he does not forget. The truth, it is like a melody. It must be played clearly, without error. We shall speak again as Clara swept from the room, her silver gown trailing like a comet's tail. Hastings let out a low whistle. She's a cool customer, Poirot. Do you really think she's mixed up in this? Poirot returned to his chair, his fingers steepled before him. Mixed up, Hastings? Perhaps, but in what way, that is the question. Miss Vane, she is not what she seems. Her grace, it is not merely that of a dancer. There is discipline, yes, but also calculation. And those hands, calloused not from pirouettes, but from something far less artistic. Hastings frowned, glancing at the door through which Clara had vanished. You're not suggesting she's the killer, are you? She's a performer, not a poisoner. Poirot's eyes twinkled with that familiar spark of insight. Mon ami, the stage is a place of illusion, and Miss Vane, she is a master of it. But whether she played the role of murderer or merely witness, that we shall discover. Come, let us return to the ballroom. The little gray cells, they are restless, and there is much yet to observe. They stepped back into the corridor where the hum of anxious voices drifted from the main hall. The masquerade had unraveled, its glamour replaced by suspicion. Poirot's mind, however, was alight, sifting through the fragments of the evening. Clara's guarded words, her calloused hands, her proximity to the champagne tray. And somewhere in the shadows of his thoughts lingered the image of the stranger in black, whose absence was as telling as his presence had been. The dance of death had begun, and Hercule Poirot was determined to lead it to its final step. Chapter 4. The Stranger in Black. The night air beyond the ballroom of Haverford Manor carried a chill that seemed to seep through the very stones of the ancient estate. Hercule Poirot stood on the garden terrace, his overcoat buttoned tightly against the autumn breeze, his keen eyes scanning the shadowed paths that wound through the manicured hedges. The revelry of the masquerade had been smothered by the tragedy of Sir Malcolm Drake's death, and the guests, now unmasked, lingered indoors under Inspector Japp's watchful eye. Yet Poirot's instincts, those infallible little gray cells, urged him outward, toward the elusive figure who had slipped through the cracks of the evening like smoke. The stranger in black. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, his breath visible in the cool air. "I don't like this, Poirot," he muttered, glancing toward the darkened gardens. "That fellow, Langer or whatever he calls himself, he's vanished like a ghost. Gives me the creeps, I tell you." Poirot's mustache curved slightly, a faint smile of amusement. "A ghost, mon ami? Non, non. He is a man, and men, they leave traces no matter how clever they believe themselves to be. Come, we shall find this Monsieur Lange." He stepped onto the gravel path, his polished shoes crunching softly, his head tilted as though listening to the night itself. The terrace opened onto a maze of yew hedges and rosebeds, their blooms faded in the moonlight. Poirot's gaze darted to the ground, noting the faint imprint of a boot in the soft earth near a stone bench. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, pointing. A man's tread, deep and deliberate. Our stranger, he passed this way, and not long ago Hastings squinted at the mark, his brow furrowing. "Could be anyone's, Poirot. Servants, guests. Half the manor's been out here tonight." Poirot shook his head, his voice low and precise. "Non, this is no servant's boot. See the shape, the depth. It is a man of height, of purpose. And look here." He knelt, his gloved finger tracing a faint smudge on the bench's edge. "Ink, perhaps, or something more chemical. Our friend, he is careless in his haste." Hastings shivered, pulling his coat tighter. "You think he's the killer, don't you? Slipping poison into Sir Malcolm's glass, then melting into the night?" Poirot rose, dusting his gloves with a fastidious flick. "I think, Hastings, that this man is no mere guest. But we shall see. Let us seek him out." Their search led them to the edge of the terrace, where a narrow door led back into the manor's lower corridors. The door was ajar, its hinges creaking faintly in the breeze. Poirot pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit passage used by the servants. The air was musty, heavy with the scent of wax and coal dust. At the far end, a shadow moved, a tall figure in a black cloak, pausing as though sensing pursuit. "Monsieur," Poirot called, his voice sharp but controlled. The figure stiffened, then turned, revealing the featureless black mask that had caught Poirot's eye in the ballroom. The man stood motionless, his posture relaxed yet alert, like a panther poised to spring. "Mr. Poirot, I presume?" the stranger said, his voice smooth with a trace of an accent. "German, perhaps, or Dutch, though carefully muted. And your companion, Captain Hastings?" You have a reputation for persistence. Poirot inclined his head, his eyes never leaving the man's mask. And you, monsieur, have a reputation for elusiveness. You call yourself Victor Lang, but I wonder, is that your true name? The stranger chuckled, a low, mirthless sound. Names are such fragile things, Mr. Poirot. Call me Lange, if it suits you. I'm merely a guest, here to enjoy Lord Haverford's hospitality. A pity about Sir Malcolm, though. A terrible accident. Poirot's gaze sharpened, his voice cutting like a blade. An accident? No, monsieur, cyanide is no accident. It is a choice, a calculation. And you, I observe, are a man of calculations. Your cloak, it bears a stain, ink, or perhaps something more sinister. And your presence, it is curiously unattached. No one here vouches for you. Tell me, what was your business with Sir Malcolm Drake? Lange's mask tilted slightly as though appraising Poirot. You're thorough, I'll give you that. But you're fishing in dark waters, Mr. Poirot. I knew Sir Malcolm only by reputation, a financier, a man of influence. I spoke to him briefly about nothing of consequence, investments perhaps. He was alive when I left him. And where were you, monsieur, when he fell? Poirot pressed, stepping closer, his small frame radiating authority. Lange shrugged, the movement fluid and dismissive. In the crowd, like everyone else. I heard the scream, saw the commotion. I stepped outside for air. Crowds unsettle me. He gestured toward the terrace door. You found me here, didn't you? Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. The man's words were smooth, rehearsed, yet there was a tension in his stance, a readiness that belied his casual tone. Most convenient, monsieur, that you were so far from the scene. And yet I wonder, why does a man with no ties to this house attend a masquerade where a murder occurs? Lange's laugh was sharp, almost mocking. You see murder everywhere, Mr. Poirot. Perhaps it was a heart attack or bad champagne. I'm no chemist. He turned as if to leave, but Poirot's voice stopped him. One moment, Monsieur Lange. Your cloak, it intrigues me. May I? Before Lange could protest, Poirot reached out, his gloved hand brushing the edge of the black fabric. The stain was faint but unmistakable. A dark smear, slightly tacky to the touch. Curieux, Poirot murmured. This is no ink. It has the scent of something metallic, perhaps. You will permit Inspector Japp to examine it, I trust? Lange's posture stiffened, his voice dropping to a hiss. You overstep, Poirot. I'm a guest, not a suspect. Unless you have proof, I suggest you keep your theories to yourself. He pulled his cloak free and strode toward the corridor's end, disappearing around a corner before Hastings could move to follow. Blast it, Poirot, Hastings exclaimed, his face flushed. He's slippery as an eel. Should we go after him? Poirot shook his head, his expression thoughtful. Non, Hastings. Let him slip, for now. He knows we watch him, and that will make him careful. But careful men, they make mistakes. We shall find his trail again. They returned to the terrace, where the night seemed colder, the stars sharper against the black sky. Poirot paused by the stone bench, his fingers tracing the smudge once more. This stain, Hastings, it is no accident. It is a clue, a thread in the tapestry of this crime. Our Monsieur Lange, he is no ordinary guest. He is a man with secrets, and secrets, they are the lifeblood of murder. Hastings frowned, his hands stuffed into his pockets. You think he's a spy, don't you? All that talk about investments and that accent, it doesn't add up. But how could he have poisoned Sir Malcolm? The champagne tray was in the ballroom, surrounded by people. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind already weaving the threads together. The how, mon ami, is a matter of opportunity. The why, that is the heart of it. Sir Malcolm's merger with Lord Haverford, it was no mere business deal. It had implications perhaps beyond these shores. And our stranger, he moves with the ease of one who knows how to hide in plain sight. They re-entered the manor, the warmth of the corridor a stark contrast to the chill outside. In the ballroom, Inspector Japp was still directing his constables, his face red with exertion. Poirot approached, his voice low. "Inspector, a word. The man who calls himself Victor Lang, I suggest you check the guest list most carefully. And his cloak, it bears a stain that may interest your chemist." Japp grunted, scribbling a note. "Lange, eh? I've had my eye on him. No one seems to know who invited him. If he's not on the list, he's got some explaining to do." Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to the champagne tray, now cordoned off by a constable. "And the glasses, Inspector, have they been tested?" "Sent to the lab already," Japp replied. "If there's cyanide in one, we'll know by morning." "You think that's how it was done?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "I think, Inspector, that the truth is like a shadow. It moves before we can grasp it. But Hercule Poirot, he is patient. The shadow will be caught." As they left Japp to his work, Poirot's thoughts returned to the stranger in black. A man without a past, a name without a face. Victor Lang was a puzzle, and Poirot detested an unsolved puzzle. The night was far from over, and the dance of suspicion had only just begun. Chapter 5. The Poison's Path. The ballroom of Haverford Manor, so recently a stage for elegance and revelry, now resembled a battlefield where gaiety had been defeated by suspicion. The chandeliers still gleamed, but their light fell coldly on the polished floor, where a chalk outline marked the spot of Sir Malcolm Drake's collapse. The guests, stripped of their masks, huddled in small groups, their whispers a low hum of unease. Hercule Poirot stood near the center of the room, his small frame commanding despite its unobtrusiveness, his green eyes scanning the scene with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a flawed gem. Captain Hastings lingered at his side, his face drawn, the crimson domino now folded neatly over his arm like a discarded banner. Inspector Japp, his broad shoulders hunched with the weight of the investigation, was directing two constables near the silver tray of champagne flutes, which had been cordoned off with a velvet rope. The tray, once a symbol of festivity, now seemed an ominous relic, its remaining glasses glinting like evidence in a trial. Poirot approached, his steps measured, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. "Inspector," he said, his voice soft but carrying, "you have examined the glasses, oui? There is progress, I trust." Japp turned, his bristling mustache twitching with irritation. "Progress, Poirot? I've got a room full of toffs, a dead banker, and a vial of poison that's got no business being here. The glasses are off to the lab, but it'll take time. Cyanide, you said. Nasty stuff. No fingerprints on the vial, though. Clean as a whistle, Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his mind at work. Clean, you say? Most interesting. The vial, it was placed in Sir Malcolm's hand after his death. This I have said. But the poison, it was not administered by the vial. Non, it was in the champagne, delivered with precision to its target." He gestured toward the tray. "One glass, Inspector, will bear the trace of cyanide." And that glass, it will tell us much. Jap raised an eyebrow, his skepticism tempered by grudging respect. You're awfully sure of yourself, Poirot. Suppose you're right. How'd the killer get the poison into just one glass without anyone noticing? Place was packed, servants everywhere. Poirot's eyes gleamed, his head tilting slightly. That, mon ami, is the art of the crime. The hand that poisons is swift, discreet, like a conjurer's trick. But Hercule Poirot, he is no stranger to such tricks. He sees through the sleight of hand. Hastings, who had been listening intently, leaned closer. You think someone slipped it in while the tray was out there? But who? The footman was serving drinks all night, and half the guests were milling about near the tray. Poirot turned to the young footman, Thomas, who stood nervously by the wall, his livery slightly askew, his pale face glistening with sweat. The boy, no more than 20, shifted under Poirot's gaze, his hands twisting together. Monsieur Thomas, Poirot called, beckoning him forward, you were responsible for the champagne, were you not? Tell me, what did you see? Thomas approached, his eyes darting between Poirot and Jap. I was just doing my job, sir, he stammered, filling glasses, passing them out. There were so many people, I couldn't keep track of everyone. I didn't see nothing unusual. His voice faltered, and his gaze flicked toward the far side of the room where Miss Clara Vane stood, her silver gown catching the light as she spoke quietly to another guest. Poirot's eyes followed the boy's glance, his mind noting the connection. Nothing unusual, you say. And yet a man is dead, poisoned by a glass you may have served. Think carefully, Monsieur Thomas. Did anyone linger near the tray? Did anyone touch a glass in a manner out of the ordinary? Thomas swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. I don't know, sir. Miss Vane, she was near the tray for a bit after her dance. She said she was thirsty, took a glass, but I didn't see her do anything odd. Honest, sir, I was just trying to keep up. Jap scribbled in his notebook, his expression grim. Right, lad, we'll have a proper talk later. Don't go far. He turned to Poirot. You think the dancer's involved? She's got the grace for it, I'll give you that. Could slip something into a glass without blinking. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Grace, Inspector, is a double-edged sword. It conceals as much as it reveals, but let us consider the tray itself. He stepped closer, his gloved finger hovering over the remaining glasses. One slightly apart from the others bore a faint smudge on its rim. A trace of lipstick, perhaps, or something less innocent. This one, he murmured. It is different. The residue, it is not champagne alone. Jap squinted at the glass, then signaled a constable to bag it carefully. You've got eyes like a hawk, Poirot. If that's our poison glass, we'll know soon enough. But it still doesn't tell us who did it, or why. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on the figures who had become the pillars of his investigation. Lord Haverford, now conferring with his butler near the grand staircase. Lady Margaret, pale and withdrawn by a window. Miss Clara Vane, her composure a mask as effective as the one she had worn, and the absence of Victor Lange, whose elusiveness gnawed at Poirot's orderly mind. The why, Inspector, he said softly, is the heart of the matter. Sir Malcolm Drake was no ordinary man. His death, it serves a purpose we shall uncover. Hastings, his brow furrowed, spoke up. Poirot, you keep hinting at this merger business. Do you think someone wanted to stop it? Lord Haverford needed it, didn't he? And that Long fellow, he's dodgy as anything. Could he be working for this Carver chap you mentioned? Poirot's eyes twinkled with approval. You begin to think, Hastings, and that is a most welcome development. Oui, the merger is a thread in this tapestry, but it is not the only one. There is passion here, mon ami, jealousy perhaps, or fear. And our Monsieur Lange, he is no mere hireling. He is a player in a larger game. The ballroom doors swung open, admitting a harried-looking police surgeon, his bag clutched tightly. "Inspector Japp," he called, "preliminary report on the vial. It's cyanide, all right, pure and potent, enough to kill a man in seconds. No prince, though, just like you," said Japp, nodded, his face grim. "And the body? Anything else?" The surgeon hesitated, glancing at Poirot. "Bruising on the wrist, slight but fresh. Could be he grabbed at someone before he went down, or someone held him." Hard to say. Poirot's mind seized on this new detail, his thoughts racing. A struggle, perhaps, or a moment of desperation. "Merci, docteur. This is most illuminating." He turned to Japp. "The wrist, Inspector. It suggests Sir Malcolm knew his danger, even if only for an instant. We must find who was closest to him in those final moments." Japp sighed, rubbing his temples. "Easier said than done, Poirot. Half the room was within arm's reach. But I'll have my men question the servants again, and that footman, Thomas. He's hiding something, I'd bet my badge on it." Poirot nodded, his expression serene, but his mind a whirlwind of connections. The smudged glass, the nervous footman, Clara Vane's proximity to the tray, and the elusive Victor Lange, all pieces of a puzzle that refused to align. Yet Poirot thrived on such challenges, his little gray cells arranging and rearranging the fragments until a pattern emerged. "Come, Hastings," he said, leading the way toward the staircase. "We shall leave Inspector Japp to his duties. But we shall follow the path of the poison wherever it leads." As they moved through the crowd, Poirot's gaze lingered on Clara Vane, whose eyes met his for a fleeting moment before she turned away. There was something in her glance, not fear, but defiance, as though she knew the game was afoot and was prepared to play it. And in the shadows of his mind, the figure of Victor Lange loomed, a specter whose motives remained as opaque as the night outside. The poison's path was treacherous, but Hercule Poirot was no stranger to danger. Chapter 6. A Lady's Tears. The private sitting room of Lady Margaret Haverford was a sanctuary of soft pastels and fragile elegance, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the ballroom below. Its walls, papered in pale rose, were adorned with delicate porcelain figurines and framed sketches of Italian villas, their serenity almost mocking the turmoil that gripped Haverford Manor. A low fire burned in the grate, casting a warm glow over the embroidered cushions and a small mahogany table, upon which lay a crumpled lace mask, its silver threads glinting like tears. Hercule Poirot entered with his customary precision, his small frame upright, his polished shoes silent on the thick Persian rug. Captain Hastings followed, his expression a mixture of sympathy and discomfort, his crimson domino now tucked into his coat pocket. Lady Margaret stood by a tall window, her sapphire gown pooling around her like spilled ink, her slender hands clutching a lace handkerchief. Her face, unmasked, was pale as alabaster, her blue eyes red-rimmed and glistening. She turned as Poirot approached, her lips trembling into a fragile smile. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You are kind to come. This dreadful night, it is too much to bear. Poirot inclined his head, his green eyes gentle but probing. Madame, it is Hercule Poirot's duty to bring order to chaos. The death of Sir Malcolm Drake, it is a wound to this house, but the truth, it will heal it. May we speak? He gestured to a pair of velvet chairs near the fire, and Lady Margaret nodded, settling into one with the grace of a wilting flower. Hastings took the other chair, his honest face creased with concern. Lady Haverford, I'm terribly sorry for your distress, he said, his voice warm. If there's anything we can do to help, you've only to say. She offered a faint nod, dabbing her eyes with the handkerchief. Thank you, Captain Hastings. You are kind, but I fear there is little to be done. Sir Malcolm was a friend to our family. His loss is a shock. Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his mind at work. A friend, you say, madame. And yet, when his name was spoken in the ballroom, your distress, it seemed more than that of a hostess mourning a guest. Permit me to ask, what was the nature of your acquaintance with Sir Malcolm? Lady Margaret's hand froze, the handkerchief pressed to her lips. Her eyes darted to the fire as though seeking refuge in its flickering light. He was a business associate of my husband's, she said, her voice steady but strained. Reginald relied on him for this merger. Sir Malcolm was generous, always ready to help. He promised to secure our future. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. Generous, oui, but generosity, it can take many forms, can it not? Financial, perhaps, but also personal. I observe, madame, that your tears are not only for a lost friend, but for something deeper. A regret, perhaps, or a fear. Her breath caught, and she rose abruptly, crossing to the window as though to distance herself from his words. You are mistaken, Mr. Poirot, she said, her voice sharper now. I am shaken, yes, but only because a man died in my home. What else could it be? Poirot's expression remained serene, but his eyes were relentless, piercing through her fragile composure. What else indeed? Madam, the heart, it speaks when the lips are silent. Sir Malcolm, he was a man of charm, of influence. Did he perhaps offer you more than financial aid? An admiration, let us say, that went beyond propriety? Lady Margaret's face flushed, a delicate pink spreading across her cheeks. She turned, her hands twisting the handkerchief into a tight knot. You are impertinent, sir, she said, though her voice trembled. Sir Malcolm was kind, nothing more. He admired me, perhaps, as men do, but I gave him no encouragement. I love my husband, Mr. Poirot. Whatever you think you see, you are wrong. Hastings shifted uncomfortably, his sense of chivalry pricked. Look here, Poirot, he whispered, leaning close. You're upsetting her. She's clearly devastated. Maybe it's just the shock, like she says. Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. Mon ami, the shock, it is real, but it hides something more. Lady Haverford, she guards a secret, and that secret, it is tied to Sir Malcolm. He rose, approaching her with the careful grace of a cat stalking a shadow. Madam, I do not accuse. I seek only to understand. Sir Malcolm's death, it was no accident. Someone in this house poisoned him, and you, I think, know more than you say. Tell me, did he speak to you of enemies? Of threats? Lady Margaret's eyes widened, and for a moment Poirot thought she might break. But she drew herself up, her delicate frame rigid with resolve. He mentioned no enemies, she said, her voice low. He was confident, always so sure of himself. He spoke of the merger, of how it would save Reginald's business. He said it was a matter of great importance, not just for us, but for others beyond our shores. Her voice faltered, and she looked away, her fingers tightening on the handkerchief. Poirot's mind seized on her words, his thoughts racing. Beyond our shores, you say? Most interesting. And did he mention anyone else in connection with this matter? A name, perhaps? A stranger or a rival? She shook her head, but her hesitation was palpable. No one specific. He was vague, always so careful with his words, but he seemed preoccupied the last time we spoke, as though he sensed something amiss. Poirot nodded, filing away this fragment of insight. And when was this last conversation, madame? Yesterday, she admitted, her voice barely audible. In the garden before the ball. He said he looked forward to the evening, that it would be a night to remember. Her eyes filled with tears, and she turned back to the window, her shoulders trembling. Hastings rose, his face a picture of concern. Lady Haverford, you've been through enough. We'll leave you to rest. He shot Poirot a pointed look, but Poirot remained seated, his fingers steepled before him. One final question, madame, Poirot said, his tone gentle but insistent. When Sir Malcolm fell, you were near the ballroom doors, oui? Did you see anyone close to him? Anyone who might have handed him a glass or lingered at his side? Lady Margaret's hand tightened on the curtain, her knuckles white. It was chaos, Mr. Poirot. People were dancing, laughing. I saw Clara Vane near the champagne tray earlier, and that strange man in the black cloak. He was watching Malcolm, I think. But I can't be sure. It all happened so fast. Poirot's eyes gleamed, the pieces of the puzzle shifting in his mind. Merci, madame. You have been most helpful. Rest now, but know that Hercule Poirot, he will find the truth, for your sake and for justice. As they left the sitting room, Hastings let out a heavy, poor woman, Poirot. She's a wreck. Do you really think she's hiding something? She seems so fragile. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Fragile, yes, but not weak. Lady Haverford, she carries a burden, Hastings, a burden of guilt, perhaps, or of knowledge she dares not share. Her tears, they are not only for Sir Malcolm, but for what his death has exposed. And this mention of beyond our shores, it confirms what I suspected. This murder, it is not merely personal. It is political. Hastings frowned, his hands in his pockets. Political? You mean that Longfellow again? He's got to be involved, hasn't he? Sneaking about, dodging questions. Mark my words, he's our man. Poirot shook his head, his expression thoughtful. Perhaps, mon ami, but the truth, it is like a fine lace. Delicate, intricate, easily torn. We must handle it with care. Lady Haverford has given us a thread, and we shall follow it through the shadows of this house to the heart of the crime. They descended the staircase, the murmur of the ballroom growing louder. Inspector Japp was still there, barking orders, while Clara Vane's silver figure glinted in a corner, her eyes meeting Poirot's for a fleeting, defiant moment. The stranger in black remained absent, but his presence lingered in Poirot's mind, a dark thread in the tapestry of the night. The truth was close, but it danced just beyond reach, and Hercule Poirot was determined to claim it. Chapter 7. The Spy's Shadow. The corridors of Haverford Manor, lit by flickering gas lamps, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings navigated their way toward the East Wing. The grandeur of the ballroom had given way to narrower passages, their walls adorned with faded tapestries and portraits of stern-faced ancestors whose eyes followed the intruders with silent judgment. The air was cooler here, heavy with the scent of old wood and wax, and the distant murmur of the remaining guests faded into an oppressive stillness. Poirot's small, precise steps echoed softly, his ebony cane tapping a rhythm that matched the cadence of his thoughts. Hastings, his face etched with unease, kept pace, his earlier discomfort now sharpened by the growing complexity of the case. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, his voice low, "this Longfellow, he's trouble, isn't he?" Slipping out of the ballroom, dodging Jap's men. "I'd wager he's halfway to London by now." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint sign of amusement. "Non, mon ami. Monsieur Lange, he is too clever to flee so clumsily. He hides, yes, but he remains close, watching, waiting. A man like him does not abandon the game until it is won or lost." He paused at a corner, his green eyes scanning the shadows. "And we, Hastings, shall find him." Their pursuit was driven by a report from a sharp-eyed maid who had seen a cloaked figure slip into a locked room near the manor's library. Poirot, with his unerring instinct for the hidden, had persuaded Inspector Jap to secure a master key from the butler. The door in question, a heavy oak panel carved with ivy motifs, stood at the end of a quiet hallway. Jap, his face flushed with the strain of the night, joined them, his skepticism barely concealed. "You're sure about this, Poirot?" Jap muttered, fumbling with the key. "If this Lange is just a guest who got spooked, we're wasting time chasing shadows." Poirot's gaze was steady, his voice calm but firm. "Shadows, Inspector, often conceal the truth. This room, it is a place of secrets, and secrets, they are the currency of murder." The lock clicked, and the door creaked open, revealing a small study cluttered with books and papers. A single lamp burned on a mahogany desk, casting a pool of light over a chaos of documents. Ledgers, letters, and maps marked with cryptic annotations. The room smelled of ink and dust, with a faint undercurrent of something sharper, almost chemical. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he stepped inside, his gloved hands hovering over the desk like a conductor before an orchestra. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, pointing to a leather-bound notebook half hidden beneath a stack of papers. "This is no ordinary study. It is a nerve center, a place of plans and plots." He lifted the notebook, revealing a photograph tucked within its pages. Sir Malcolm Drake, smiling broadly, standing beside a foreign-looking man in a stiff military uniform. The background showed a port, ships docked under a gray sky. Jap's eyebrows shot up. "Who's that with Drake? Looks like some foreign bigwig." "And what's this doing here?" Poirot's fingers traced the photograph's edge, his mind racing. "This, Inspector, is a clue to the motive. Sir Malcolm's merger with Lord Haverford, it was not merely a matter of pounds and shillings. It touched upon matters of international consequence." He turned to the desk, his gaze falling on a small panel in the wood, slightly misaligned. With a gentle press, it sprang open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a bundle of letters, their edges sealed with red wax, the writing dense with numbers and symbols. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Codes," he murmured. "The language of espionage. Our Monsieur Lange, he is no guest. He is a spy." Hastings let out a low whistle, his eyes wide. "A spy? Good Lord, Poirot, you mean we're dealing with some international plot? But how does that tie to the poison?" Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. The poison, mon ami, is the weapon of the silent. A spy does not draw attention with a pistol or a knife. He strikes with precision, in the midst of a crowd, and leaves no trace, except, perhaps, a stain on a cloak. He gestured to a corner of the room where a black cloak hung on a peg, its hem bearing the same dark smear he had noted on the terrace. Japp seized the cloak, holding it to the light. "This is Lang's, all right. That stain. What is it, Poirot?" "You said it wasn't ink." Poirot leaned closer, his nose twitching slightly. "No, Inspector, it is cyanide, spilled in haste. The laboratory will confirm it, but Hercule Poirot, he knows. This cloak, it was worn by the hand that poisoned Sir Malcolm Japp's face hardened." "Right. We'll have this analyzed, and I want Lang in cuffs by dawn. He's got to be somewhere in this house." He turned to a constable who had appeared at the door. "Search every room, every cupboard. No one leaves the manor." As Japp barked orders, Poirot returned to the letters, his gloved fingers carefully unfolding one. The code was complex, but his mind, trained in patterns, began to unravel its meaning. "These letters," he said to Hastings, "they speak of trade routes, of shipments, of alliances. Sir Malcolm's merger, it threatened interests far beyond England's shores. Someone, perhaps a government, perhaps a rival, wished it stopped." Hastings frowned, his hands in his pockets. "So Lang poisoned him to kill the deal. But why the masquerade? Why not do it quietly somewhere else?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice low and deliberate. "The masquerade, mon ami, is the perfect stage. A crowd, masks, confusion. It is a spy's playground. The poison was delivered in plain sight, yet unseen. And the vial placed in Sir Malcolm's hand was a message, a warning to others who might pursue his path." The constable returned, his face pale. "Inspector, we've found something else. In the library, hidden behind a bookcase, a satchel with more papers and a vial like the one you found." Japp's eyes widened. "Another vial? Bring it here, lad." The constable hurried off, and Japp turned to Poirot. "You're onto something, Poirot. This is bigger than I thought. But if Lang is a spy, he's not working alone. Someone in this house had to know, had to help him." Poirot nodded, his thoughts racing. "Précisément, Inspector. The spy, he moves like a shadow, but even shadows need light to exist. Someone in Haverford Manor, perhaps Lord Haverford, perhaps Miss Vane, perhaps even Lady Margaret, knows more than they have told." They left the study, the weight of their discovery settling over them. The library, a cavernous room lined with towering shelves, was a maze of shadows and silence. The constable led them to a hidden alcove where a leather satchel lay behind a false panel. Inside were more coded letters, a map of European ports, and a second glass vial identical to the first, its contents shimmering faintly in the lamplight. Poirot's mind whirled, connecting the threads. "This satchel," he said, "it is Lange's insurance, his escape plan. But he has not retrieved it. Why? Because he is still here, watching, waiting for his moment." Hastings shivered, glancing at the darkened shelves. "It's like a blasted spy novel, Poirot. What's next? A secret passage?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, mon ami. But for now we return to the ballroom. The players in this drama, they are all on stage, and Hercule Poirot, he will watch until one of them falters." As they made their way back, the manor seemed to close in around them, its walls whispering of betrayal and hidden motives. The coded letters, the stained cloak, the second vial, all pointed to Victor Lang, yet Poirot sensed the puzzle was incomplete. The spy's shadow loomed large, but it was not alone, and the truth, like the cyanide, was lethal and elusive. Chapter 8. The Dancer's Past. The library of Haverford Manor, with its towering shelves and heavy air of aged paper, was a world apart from the glittering chaos of the ballroom. The gas lamps cast long shadows across the oak-paneled walls, where portraits of long-dead Haverfords gazed down with immutable severity. Hercule Poirot stood near a carved reading table, his small figure almost swallowed by the grandeur of the room, yet his presence commanded attention. His gloved hands rested lightly on the leather satchel they had found, its contents, coded letters, a map, and a second vial of cyanide, spread before him like pieces of a shattered mosaic. Captain Hastings paced nearby, his face a mixture of excitement and unease, his earlier discomfort now sharpened by the discovery of Victor Lang's secrets. "Poirot," Hastings said, pausing to glance at the satchel. "This is getting deeper by the minute. Spies, coded letters, poison vials. It's like something out of a penny dreadful. But where does Miss Vane fit into all this? You've got that look, the one that means you're onto something." Poirot's green eyes twinkled, his mustache twitching with the faintest hint of a smile. "Mon ami, you begin to know me too well. Miss Clara Vane, she is a puzzle within a puzzle. Her grace, her poise, they are not merely the tools of a dancer, they are the mask of something more formidable. And Hercule Poirot, he must uncover what lies beneath Inspector Japp, who had joined them after securing the satchel's contents, snorted softly. Formidable. She's a dancer, Poirot, not a master criminal. Though I'll grant you she was near that champagne tray, and Thomas the footman didn't half look nervous when he mentioned her." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the edge of a coded letter. "Précisément, Inspector," the footman's glance, Miss Vane's presence, the smudged glass. "All are threads in the tapestry of this crime. But to understand the pattern, we must return to Mademoiselle Vaughn. Her past, I suspect, holds the key." Leaving the library under the watchful eye of a constable, Poirot and Hastings made their way to a small anteroom where Clara Vane had agreed to meet them. The room was spare, its walls adorned with a single watercolor of a stormy sea. Its only furniture a pair of brocade chairs and a low table. Clara stood by the window, her silver gown replaced by a simpler dress of dove-gray silk, her hair pinned loosely, revealing the sharp lines of her face. Her silver mask lay on the table, a relic of the night's earlier illusions. "Mademoiselle Vane," Poirot began, his voice smooth but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "We meet again. You will forgive me, I hope, for pressing you further. The death of Sir Malcolm Drake, it is a matter most grave, and your role in this evening, it demands clarity." Clara turned, her storm-gray eyes meeting his with a flicker of defiance. "I've told you what I know, Mr. Poirot. I danced, I spoke with Sir Malcolm, I refused his offer of patronage. I was near the refreshment table when he fell, but so were dozens of others. What more do you want from me?" Poirot took a seat, gesturing for her to do the same. "What I want, mademoiselle, is the truth. And the truth, it is not found in what you say, but in what you conceal. Your hands, for example." He paused, his gaze dropping to her fingers, which she quickly folded in her lap. "They are calloused, not from the delicate work of a dancer, but from something else. A weapon, perhaps, a tool of a trade less artistic." Clara's lips parted, a sharp intake of breath betraying her composure. "You're mistaken, Mr. Poirot. Dancing is grueling work. My hands bear the marks of years of practice, nothing more." Hastings, standing by the door, shifted uncomfortably. "Look here, Miss Vane," he said, his tone gentler. "We're not trying to trap you. But Sir Malcolm was poisoned, and you were seen near the tray. If you know anything at all, it could help us." Clara's eyes flicked to Hastings, softening for a moment before hardening again. "Captain Hastings, I appreciate your kindness, but I have nothing to hide. I didn't know Sir Malcolm well. He was a man with money and influence, the kind who thinks they can buy anything, even loyalty. I told him no, and that was the end of it." Poirot leaned forward, his voice low and deliberate. "And yet, mademoiselle, it was not the end. Sir Malcolm recognized you, did he not? Not as Clara Vane, the dancer, but as someone else, someone from a past you have taken great pains to conceal." Her face paled, her fingers tightening in her lap. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the room, broken only by the distant ticking of a clock. Then she laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "You have a vivid imagination, Mr. Poirot. I'm a dancer, nothing more. My past is no mystery. Covent Garden, provincial tours, a life on the stage. If Sir Malcolm thought he knew me, he was mistaken." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind sifting through her words like a prospector panning for gold. "Mistaken? Non, mademoiselle. Sir Malcolm was not a man to make such errors. I have made inquiries, discreet of course, and I have learned that Clara Vane, the dancer, appeared in London only 3 years ago, with no record before that. A curious gap for one so talented. And your hands, they tell a story of their own. They are the hands of one who has handled more than ballet slippers, perhaps a pistol or the tools of a courier." Clara's composure cracked, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and defiance. "You've been digging into my life, have you?" "Very well, Mr. Poirot, since you're so determined to know. Yes, I have a past, one I left behind. Before I was a dancer, I worked for certain people. I carried messages, papers, nothing more. It was wartime, and I did what I had to. But that life is over. I'm no spy, no assassin." Poirot's mustache quivered, a sign of his triumph. "A courier, you say? Most interesting. And Sir Malcolm, he knew of this past, did he not? He threatened to expose you, perhaps to force your compliance in some matter? Was it the merger, mademoiselle, or something more personal?" Clara stood abruptly, her hands clenched at her sides. "He recognized me from a meeting years ago in Paris. He was there with some foreign officials, and I was delivering documents. He said he'd tell everyone, ruin my career unless I helped him with his plans. But I refused, Mr. Poirot. I told him to go to the devil, and I meant it." Hastings, his jaw dropping, stepped forward. "Good Lord, Miss Vane, you mean Sir Malcolm was blackmailing you? That's motive, Poirot. She could have poisoned him to keep him quiet." Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. "Motive, oui. But proof, that is another matter. Mademoiselle Vane, you were near the champagne tray. Your skills as a courier, sleight of hand, the ability to move unseen. They would make you adept at such a task. Did you, in a moment of desperation, slip cyanide into his glass?" Clara's eyes flashed, her voice cold. "I did not. I hated him for what he tried to do, but I didn't kill him. I'm no murderer, Mr. Poirot. Whatever you think of my past." Poirot studied her, his mind racing. Her defiance was genuine, but so was her fear. She was a woman caught in a web. but whether as spider or prey he could not yet say. "Very well, mademoiselle," he said, rising. "For now, I accept your words." But Hercule Poirot, he does not forget. The truth, it will emerge, like a dancer stepping into the light. As they left the anteroom, Hastings shook his head. "She's a firecracker, Poirot. A courier of all things. Do you believe her? That she didn't do it?" Poirot's expression was enigmatic, his eyes distant. "I believe, mon ami, that she speaks part of the truth, but not all. Her past, it connects her to Sir Malcolm and perhaps to our elusive Monsieur Lange. The merger, the espionage, the poison, they are all threads in the same tapestry. And we, Hastings, must weave them together." They returned to the ballroom, where Inspector Japp was overseeing the collection of statements from the guests. The air was thick with tension, the once vibrant masquerade now a grim tableau of suspicion. Clara Vane's revelation had added a new layer to the mystery, but Poirot's mind was already turning to the next piece. The stranger in black, whose shadow loomed ever larger. The dance of death was far from over, and Hercule Poirot was determined to lead it to its final bow. Chapter 9. The Host's Desperation. The grand staircase of Haverford Manor, with its polished mahogany banisters and crimson runner, seemed to groan under the weight of the night's tragedy as Hercule Poirot ascended, his small, precise steps echoing in the cavernous hall. Captain Hastings followed, his face a mask of concern, his earlier unease now tinged with a growing sense of urgency. The ballroom below buzzed with the low murmur of Inspector Japp's men taking statements, but Poirot's focus was elsewhere, drawn inexorably to the man at the heart of the manor. Lord Reginald Haverford. The host's study, where they had first spoken, beckoned once more, its heavy oak door a portal to secrets yet unspoken. The study was unchanged, its leather-bound books and maritime charts bathed in the flickering glow of the fire. Lord Haverford stood by the sideboard, a glass of brandy in his hand, though it remained untouched, as if the act of pouring it had been more ritual than necessity. His burgundy doublet hung loosely now, unbuttoned to reveal a shirt creased with the strain of the evening. His raven-feathered mask, discarded hours ago, lay on the desk, a silent witness to the unraveling of his carefully curated world. "Lord Haverford," Poirot began, his voice smooth but edged with purpose. "We must speak again. The death of Sir Malcolm Drake, it casts a shadow over your house, and that shadow it grows darker with each passing hour." Haverford turned, his gray eyes weary but defiant. "What more can I say, Mr. Poirot? I've told you all I know. Malcolm was my friend, my partner in a venture that would have secured my family's future. His death is a blow, to me, to my wife, to everything we've built." He set the glass down with a clink, his hand trembling slightly. Poirot took a seat in a high-backed chair, his gloved hands resting lightly on his cane. "A blow, oui, but perhaps not an unexpected one. Your business, Lord Haverford, it is not as sound as you claim. Hercule Poirot, he has made inquiries, discreet of course, and he has learned that your shipping interests teeter on the edge of ruin. Sir Malcolm's merger, it was your salvation, was it not?" Haverford's face flushed, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "You've been prying into my affairs, have you?" "Yes, the business has had setbacks. Bad investments, storms, piracy on the trade routes. But the merger would have changed all that. Malcolm's capital, his connections, it was a lifeline, not a noose." Poirot's mustache quivered, his eyes narrowing. A lifeline, you say? And yet lifelines, they can slip from the grasp, especially when trust is shaken. Tell me, monsieur, were you aware that Sir Malcolm harbored feelings for Lady Haverford? Feelings that perhaps went beyond the bounds of friendship? The room seemed to still, the crackle of the fire the only sound. Haverford's hands clenched into fists, his voice dropping to a low growl. What are you implying, Poirot? Margaret is my wife, loyal and true. Malcolm was a gentleman, not some cad chasing skirts. If you're suggesting... I suggest nothing, Poirot interrupted, his tone calm but unyielding. I observe. And I observe, Lord Haverford, that your wife's tears were not merely for a lost friend, but for a man whose attentions, however unwanted, caused her pain. Did you know of these attentions? Did they perhaps drive you to act? Haverford slammed his fist on the sideboard, the brandy decanter rattling. That's enough. I won't have you slandering my wife or accusing me of murder in my own home. Malcolm was my friend, damn it. I needed him alive, his money, his influence. Why would I kill him? Hastings, standing by the door, shifted uncomfortably. Steady on, Poirot, he murmured. The man's got a point. Killing Sir Malcolm would ruin the merger, and from what you say, that's the last thing he'd want. Poirot's gaze remained fixed on Haverford, his expression serene but relentless. Précisément, Hastings. The merger was Lord Haverford's salvation, but salvation, it can breed desperation. And desperation, it can lead to acts unthinkable. Tell me, monsieur, where were you when Sir Malcolm fell? You were not in the ballroom, I think, but near the doors, conferring with your butler. A convenient distance, perhaps? Haverford's eyes flashed with anger, but there was a flicker of something else. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. I was seeing to the guests, he said tightly. The ball was in full swing, and I was ensuring everything ran smoothly. When I heard the scream, I was with old Carstairs discussing the wine. Ask him if you don't believe me. Poirot nodded, his fingers tapping lightly on his cane. I shall, monsieur. But let us consider another possibility. Sir Malcolm's merger. It was not only a matter of business, but of power. Power that reached beyond England's shores. Did he speak to you of foreign interests, of men who might oppose such a deal? Haverford hesitated, his gaze dropping to the fire. He mentioned complications. Some foreign investors, German or Dutch, I think, who weren't keen on our plans. He said they'd make trouble, but he was confident he could handle it. Malcolm was always confident, his voice softened, a trace of genuine grief breaking through. Poirot's mind seized on this, the threads of the case weaving tighter. Complications, you say? And did he mention a man, tall, cloaked in black, calling himself Victor Lang? Haverford's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. Lang? Yes, Malcolm pointed him out earlier in the evening. Said he was a businessman, but he didn't trust him. Thought he might be sniffing around for information. You think he's involved? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. I think, monsieur, that this Long is a shadow in a house full of shadows. And you, Lord Haverford, you stand at the center of this storm. Your business, your wife, your friend, all are entangled in this tragedy. If you know more, now is the time to speak. Haverford sank into a chair, his shoulders slumping. I've told you everything, Poirot. I swear it. If someone killed Malcolm, it wasn't me. I needed him, more than anyone knows. His voice cracked, and he looked away, his hands gripping the arms of the chair. Hastings, ever the empath, stepped forward. "Look, Lord Haverford, we're not your enemies. Poirot's trying to get to the bottom of this. If you're innocent, help us. Did you see anything odd? Anyone near Malcolm or the champagne tray?" Haverford shook his head, his expression haggard. It was a blur, masks, music, people everywhere. "I saw Clara Vane near the tray at one point, and that footman, Thomas, was hovering about. But nothing stood out. Not until the scream." Poirot rose, his movements deliberate. "Merci, Lord Haverford. Your words, they are illuminating, even in their silences. We shall leave you now, but Hercule Poirot, he will return. The truth it cannot hide forever." As they left the study, Hastings let out a heavy sigh. "He's in a bad way, Poirot. You pushed him hard, jealousy, murder, the lot. Do you really think he could have done it? He'd be cutting his own throat, killing the man who was going to save his business." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice low. "Desperation, mon ami, it clouds the mind. Lord Haverford, he needed Sir Malcolm, but he also feared him. Feared his influence over Lady Margaret, feared the loss of control. And yet I wonder, is his desperation born of love or of something darker?" They descended the staircase, the manor's oppressive silence pressing in around them. The ballroom was quieter now. The guests dispersed to their rooms or gathered in hushed clusters under Japp's scrutiny. Clara Vane stood near a pillar, her gray dress a stark contrast to her earlier silver elegance, her eyes meeting Poirot's with a flicker of challenge. The absence of Victor Lange gnawed at Poirot's mind, a missing piece in the puzzle. The host's desperation was a key, but to what lock? The truth, like the manor's shadows, was closing in, and Hercule Poirot was ready to meet it. Chapter 10. The Confrontation. The ballroom of Haverford Manor, once a glittering stage for the masquerade, now stood as a somber arena, its chandeliers casting a pallid glow over the polished oak floor. The chalk outline where Sir Malcolm Drake had fallen was gone, but the memory of his collapse lingered like a stain. The remaining guests, their masks long discarded, were gathered at Inspector Japp's insistence, their faces a gallery of unease, suspicion, and fatigue. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small figure commanding the space with an authority that belied his stature. His ebony cane rested lightly in his hand, his green eyes sharp as they swept over the assembled figures. Lord Haverford rigid with suppressed emotion. Lady Margaret, her delicate frame trembling beside her husband. Miss Clara Vane, poised but wary, her gray dress a stark contrast to her earlier silver elegance. And Victor Lang, the stranger in black, who had been found lurking in a servant's passage and now stood with a guarded calm, his featureless mask replaced by a face of angular precision. Captain Hastings stood at Poirot's side, his honest face creased with anticipation. "This is it, isn't it, Poirot?" he whispered. "You're going to lay it all out like you always do." I can feel it. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Patience, mon ami. The truth, it is like a fine wine. It must be savored, not rushed. But the moment has come to unmask the killer." He turned to the crowd, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Mesdames et messieurs, you have been patient, and for that Hercule Poirot is grateful. A crime has been committed in this house, a murder most calculated, most cruel. Sir Malcolm Drake was poisoned, not by chance, but by a hand that knew its purpose. Tonight we shall name that hand. A ripple of tension passed through the room. Lord Haverford's jaw tightened, his gray eyes narrowing. Lady Margaret clutched her husband's arm, her handkerchief pressed to her lips. Clara Vane's posture stiffened, her storm-gray eyes locked on Poirot with a mixture of defiance and dread. Victor Lange remained still, his expression unreadable, though his fingers twitched slightly at his side. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm. Let us begin with the method. Sir Malcolm died of cyanide, a poison swift and silent, delivered in a glass of champagne. The vial found in his hand. That was a clever touch, placed after death to suggest suicide or accident. But Hercule Poirot, he is not fooled by such tricks. The poison was in the glass, a glass chosen with care, handed to Sir Malcolm in a moment of distraction amidst the Masquerade's chaos. Inspector Japp, standing near the refreshment table, nodded grimly. We've got the glass, Poirot. The lab confirmed it. Cyanide, just like you said. A smudge on the rim, too, but no clear prints. Whoever did it was careful. Poirot inclined his head. Careful, oui, but not invisible. Let us consider the players in this drama. Lord Haverford, you stood to gain everything from Sir Malcolm's merger. Your business, it was on the brink of ruin. His death, it threatens all you hope to achieve. And yet your wife's distress, her tears for Sir Malcolm, did they stir in you a jealousy, a rage that could not be contained? Haverford's face reddened, his voice a low growl. I've told you, Poirot, I needed Malcolm alive. My wife's tears were for a friend, nothing more. I'm no murderer. Poirot's gaze shifted to Lady Margaret, whose eyes widened in alarm. Madame, your sorrow, it is genuine, but it is not simple. Sir Malcolm admired you, perhaps too warmly. Did his attentions threaten your honor, your marriage? Did you, in a moment of fear, seek to silence him? Lady Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her chest. How dare you, Mr. Poirot? I refused him, yes, but I would never, never harm him. I loved my husband, my home. You're wrong. Poirot nodded, his expression serene. Perhaps, madame. And so we turned to Mademoiselle Clara Vaughan. He faced the dancer, whose chin lifted defiantly. You, mademoiselle, are no mere performer. Your past as a courier, your skill in moving unseen, your presence near the champagne tray. These make you a figure of interest. Sir Malcolm knew your secret, threatened to expose it. Did you poison him to protect your new life? Clara's eyes blazed, her voice steady but sharp. I told you, Mr. Poirot, I refused his blackmail, but I didn't kill him. I'm no poisoner. My hands are clean. Poirot's gaze lingered on her, then moved to the final figure. And so we come to Monsieur Victor Lange, or whatever your true name may be. Lange's lips curled into a faint, mocking smile, but he remained silent. You, monsieur, are no guest. You are a spy sent to disrupt a merger that threatened interests far beyond this manor. Your cloak bears the stain of cyanide. Your satchel holds coded letters, and your presence here is no coincidence. You slipped the poison into Sir Malcolm's glass, using the Masquerade's chaos to shield your act. A murmur swept through the room, heads turning toward Lange. Japp stepped forward, his hand on his notebook. That's a heavy accusation, Poirot. You've got proof? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Proof, Inspector? The proof is in the pattern. The letters in the satchel, they speak of trade routes, of foreign powers opposed to Sir Malcolm's plans. The stain on Monsieur Lange's cloak, it is cyanide. spilled perhaps in the act of poisoning the glass. And his absence from the guest list, his calculated elusiveness, these are the marks of a man with a mission. Lange's smile faded, his eyes narrowing. You weave a fine story, Poirot, but stories aren't evidence. I'm a businessman, nothing more. You have no witnesses, no fingerprints. You're grasping at shadows. Poirot's voice grew softer, more dangerous. Shadows, monsieur? No. The shadow is you, moving through this house unseen but not unnoticed. The footman Thomas saw you near the tray, lingering just long enough to perform your task. And the bruise on Sir Malcolm's wrist. Did he grasp at you in his final moments, sensing his doom? Lange's composure faltered, his hand twitching toward his pocket. Jap, quick to react, signaled a constable who moved to block the door. Stay where you are, Lange, Jap barked. We'll have that cloak tested and those letters decoded. If Poirot's right, you're done for. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. One moment, Inspector. Let us complete the picture. The merger was a threat to certain powers, powers that employed Monsieur Lange to stop it. Sir Malcolm's death was no act of passion but of policy. The Masquerade, it was the perfect stage, and you, monsieur, played your part to perfection, almost. The room was silent, every eye on Lange. Lady Margaret stifled a sob, clinging to her husband. Clara Vane's face was unreadable, her hands clasped tightly. Haverford's gaze was fixed on Lange, a mixture of anger and betrayal in his eyes. Poirot stepped closer to Lange, his voice dropping to a whisper. You thought to escape, monsieur, but Hercule Poirot, he sees all. The truth, it is a mirror, and it reflects your guilt. Lange's eyes darted to the door, then back to Poirot. For a moment it seemed he might bolt, but the constable's presence and Jap's stern gaze held him in place. The ballroom, once a place of celebration, was now a courtroom, and Poirot its relentless judge. Hastings leaned close, his voice low. You've got him, Poirot. But what if he doesn't crack? What if Jap's tests don't hold up? Poirot's eyes gleamed, his confidence unshaken. The tests, mon ami, they will confirm what the little gray cells already know. But even without them, the truth will emerge. It always does when Hercule Poirot is on the stage. Chapter 11. The Confession. The ballroom of Haverford Manor, its opulence dimmed by the weight of tragedy, held its breath as Hercule Poirot stood at its center. His small figure a beacon of certainty amidst the flickering shadows of doubt. The chandeliers above cast a cold, unyielding light on the assembled figures. Lord Haverford, his face taut with suppressed fury. Lady Margaret, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Miss Clara Vane, her posture rigid, her storm-gray eyes locked on the floor. And Victor Lang, the stranger in black, whose angular features now betrayed a flicker of unease beneath his calculated calm. Inspector Japp stood near the refreshment table, his notebook in hand, his constables flanking the exits to ensure no one slipped away. Captain Hastings, at Poirot's side, shifted nervously, his honest face alight with anticipation, sensing the climax of the drama. Poirot's voice, clear and resonant, cut through the tense silence. Mesdames et messieurs, we have reached the moment of truth. Sir Malcolm Drake was murdered, poisoned by cyanide slipped into his champagne glass during the masquerade. The vial in his hand, it was a ruse, a distraction placed after death. The killer, he is among us, and now He shall be named Victor Lang's lips curled into a faint, mocking smile. But his eyes were wary, darting to the constables at the door. "You're a showman, Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice smooth but edged with strain. "But you've no proof, only theories. You cannot pin this on me without evidence." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his mustache quivering with the thrill of the chase. "Evidence, Monsieur Lange?" "The evidence. It is all around us, woven into the fabric of this night. Let us unravel it." He paced slowly, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm, each step drawing the room's attention like a magnet. "The stain on your cloak, monsieur, it is cyanide spilled in the act of poisoning the glass. The coded letters in your satchel, they reveal your true purpose: to halt a merger that threatened interests far beyond this manor. And your absence from the guest list, your elusiveness, these are not the actions of an innocent man." Lange's smile faltered, his hand twitching toward his pocket. Jap, ever alert, stepped closer, his voice sharp. "Keep your hands where I can see them, Lang. We've got the cloak and the labs working on it. If it's cyanide, you're in deep." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Patience, Inspector. Let us complete the picture. Monsieur Lange, you are a spy employed by a foreign power to stop Sir Malcolm's merger with Lord Haverford. This merger, it was no mere business deal. It promised to shift trade routes, to alter alliances, to challenge those who profit from the status quo. You attended this masquerade not as a guest, but as an agent, using the chaos of masks and music to deliver your poison." A gasp rippled through the room. Lady Margaret clutched her husband's arm, her face pale as moonlight. Lord Haverford's eyes burned with a mixture of shock and betrayal. Clara Vane remained still, her expression unreadable, though her hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles gleamed white. Lange's composure cracked, his voice rising. "You're spinning a tale, Poirot, nothing more. Yes, I'm a businessman with interests abroad, but a spy? A murderer? You've no witness, no proof I touched that glass. The footman, Thomas, he was serving the champagne. Why not question him?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his gaze unwavering. "Thomas, he is nervous, oui, but he is no killer." His glance toward Mademoiselle Vaughan, it was not guilt, but fear. Fear of what he saw, perhaps, or what he suspected. "But you, monsieur, were seen near the tray by more than one witness. The maid, Eliza, noted your presence, your hand lingering near the glasses, and the bruise on Sir Malcolm's wrist. It suggests a struggle, a moment when he grasped at his betrayer. Was it you, monsieur, he reached for in his final seconds?" Lange's eyes darted to the door, his posture tensing as though poised to flee. Jap signaled a constable who moved closer, his hand on his truncheon. "Don't try it, Lange," Jap warned. "You're not slipping out of this one." Poirot stepped forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying the weight of inevitability. "You cannot run from the truth, monsieur. The coded letters, they name you. Not as Victor Lang, but as Victor Langenfeld, an agent known to certain circles in Berlin. The photograph in the study, it shows Sir Malcolm with a diplomat whose government opposed the merger. You were their instrument sent to ensure its failure. The cyanide, it was your weapon slipped into the glass with the skill of a man trained in deception." Lang's face contorted, a flash of panic breaking through his facade. "You're mad, Poirot. You think you can trap me with guesses? Those letters prove nothing, and the stain, it could be anything. I demand to see my solicitor." Poirot's smile widened, a predator sensing the kill. A solicitor, monsieur? Perhaps he can explain the second vial hidden in your satchel identical to the one placed in Sir Malcolm's hand, or the map of ports marked with routes that your employers wish to control. But no, you will not need a solicitor. You will need only the courage to confess. The room was silent, every eye on Lang. Lady Margaret's sob broke the stillness, her handkerchief pressed to her lips. Lord Haverford's face was a mask of fury, his fists clenched. Clara Vane's eyes met Poirot's for a fleeting moment, a spark of relief in their depths, as though a weight had lifted. Lang's shoulders slumped, his defiance crumbling like a sandcastle before the tide. "Enough," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "You're too clever, Poirot." "Yes, I did it. I poisoned Drake. He was a threat, a fool who thought he could play with powers bigger than him. The merger would have ruined everything my employers worked for. I slipped the cyanide into his glass during the dance when no one was watching. The vial, it was to make it look like suicide, to throw you off." He laughed bitterly, his eyes hollow. "But you see everything," Japp pounced, signaling his constables. "That's all I need. Victor Langenfeld, you're under arrest for the murder of Sir Malcolm Drake. Cuff him, lads." The constables moved swiftly, securing Langer's wrists as he stood, unresisting, his gaze fixed on Poirot with a mixture of resentment and respect. Hastings let out a low whistle, his face alight with awe. "You did it, Poirot. You had him dead to rights. But how did you know? The letters, the stain, it was all so vague." Poirot's eyes twinkled, his voice soft but triumphant. "The little gray cells, mon ami. They see what others miss. The pattern was there in the shadows of this house, in the motives hidden behind masks. Monsieur Lange, he thought himself invisible, but no one escapes Hercule Poirot. As the constables led Lange away, the ballroom seemed to exhale, the tension draining, like water from a breached dam. Lord Haverford embraced his wife, his anger giving way to relief. Clara Vane slipped quietly toward the door, her face unreadable but her shoulders relaxed. Japp clapped Poirot on the back, his gruff voice warm. "You're a menace, Poirot, but I'll be damned if you don't deliver. We'll need a statement, but you've saved us a heap of trouble." Poirot inclined his head, his expression serene. "The truth, Inspector, it is my only purpose." And now it is served. The guests began to disperse, their whispers a mixture of shock and admiration. Poirot stood alone for a moment, his cane resting lightly in his hand, his mind already turning to the final threads of the mystery. The confession had been won, but the echoes of the masquerade lingered, and Hercule Poirot knew that truth, like a dance, was never truly finished until the last step was taken. Chapter 12. The Final Mask. The grand ballroom of Haverford Manor, its chandeliers now dimmed, stood in quiet aftermath, as if the very walls exhaled relief at the unmasking of Sir Malcolm Drake's killer. The guests had dispersed, some to their rooms, others to carriages waiting in the cold September night, their whispers of shock and awe trailing like mist. The chalk outline of the fallen financier was gone, the champagne tray removed for evidence, and the air, once thick with suspicion, now carried a fragile sense of resolution. Hercule Poirot stood near the grand staircase, his small figure immaculate in his tailored suit, his ebony cane resting lightly in his gloved hand. His green eyes, sharp as ever, surveyed the scene with a quiet satisfaction, though his mind, ever restless, lingered on the intricacies of the case now closed. Captain Hastings, his crimson domino long discarded, joined him, his face alight with admiration. "You've done it again, Poirot," he said, his voice warm with relief. Lang, or Langenfeld, I should say, caught red-handed, or rather cyanide-stained. I thought he'd slipped through our fingers, but you had him pinned from the start. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile curving his lips. Mon ami the criminal, he believes himself clever, but he forgets that Hercule Poirot, he is always one step ahead. The little gray cells, they see through the masks, the lies, the shadow. And tonight, they have prevailed. Inspector Japp approached, his notebook tucked under his arm, his bristling mustache betraying a grudging respect. "You've made my job easier, Poirot, I'll give you that," he said, his tone gruff but appreciative. "Langenfeld's on his way to the station, and those letters, well, they're with the intelligence boys now. This wasn't just murder, was it? It's a blasted international incident." Poirot inclined his head, his expression serene. "Précisément, Inspector. The death of Sir Malcolm Drake, it was a move in a larger game, a game of power, of trade, of secrets that stretch across borders. But the game, it ends here in this ballroom with the truth laid bare." Lord Haverford emerged from a side door, his broad shoulders stooped, his face etched with the weariness of a man who had faced ruin and survived. Lady Margaret clung to his arm, her sapphire gown replaced by a simple shawl, her eyes still red but calmer now, as if the storm within her had passed. "Mr. Poirot," Haverford said, his voice low but steady, "I owe you a debt. You've saved my family's name, though at a cost. Malcolm's death, it's a wound that won't heal easily." Poirot's gaze softened, though his voice remained precise. "Monsieur, the wound of truth, it is painful, but it heals. Your merger, it is lost, but your honor, it remains. And madam," he turned to Lady Margaret, "your tears, they were not in vain. They spoke of loyalty, of love, and they guided me to the truth." Lady Margaret's lips trembled into a faint smile. "You saw more than I wished, Mr. Poirot. But thank you for everything." She glanced at her husband, her hand tightening on his arm, a silent vow of unity. Across the room, Miss Clara Vane lingered near a pillar, her gray dress a quiet echo of her earlier brilliance. Her eyes met Poirot's, no longer defiant but softened by relief. She approached, her steps deliberate, her voice low. "Mr. Poirot, I owe you an apology. I feared you'd ruin me, expose my past. But you saw the truth and you spared me. I can dance again, free of that shadow." Poirot's smile was gentle, almost paternal. "Mademoiselle, the stage is yours once more. Your past, it is a chapter closed. But take care. The world, it is full of shadows, and not all are so easily dispelled." Clara nodded, a spark of her old fire returning. "I'll be careful, Mr. Poirot, and perhaps I'll dedicate my next performance to you." With a graceful curtsy, she turned and slipped away, her silhouette fading into the corridor. Japp clapped his hands, breaking the moment. "Right, Poirot, I've got paperwork to sort and a report to file. You'll be around if we need you for the trial." Poirot nodded, his expression unruffled. "Hercule Poirot, he is always at the service of justice, Inspector, but for now I believe a cup of tisane and a moment of repose are in order." As Japp departed, barking orders to his constables, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "It's over, then? Lange's confession, the letters, the cyanide, it all fits. But I can't help feeling there's something we missed." "What about the footman, Thomas? He was so jumpy." Poirot's eyes twinkled, his voice soft but certain. Thomas, mon ami. He was a witness to the tension, not the crime. His fear, it was of the chaos, of the suspicion that fell on him. But the true culprit, he was always Monsieur Langenfeld. The little gray cells, they do not air. They stepped out onto the terrace, the night air sharp and clear. The stars, glittering like the chandeliers within. The manor loomed behind them, its secrets laid bare, its masks cast aside. Poirot adjusted his tie, his gaze distant but content. "Come, Hastings," he said, his voice light. "The night is young, and there is always another mystery waiting. The world, it is a stage, and Hercule Poirot, he is never far from the spotlight." Hastings chuckled, falling into step beside him. "You're incorrigible, Poirot." But I wouldn't have it any other way as they descended the gravel path toward the waiting carriage. The manor stood silent, its windows dark, its story told. The ebony mask of murder had been lifted, and the truth, as always, shone clear under the relentless gaze of Hercule Poirot.